All right, let's just jump right in. For decades, the biggest financial decision of your life has been sold to us as this simple choice, almost a rite of passage, right? But what if that conventional wisdom isn't just a little off, but is actually dangerously wrong? Today, we're going to tear apart the myths to get to the real truth about renting versus buying.
I mean, you've heard this a million times. It's the go-to line from parents, friends, pretty much every real estate agent on the planet. The whole idea is that every rent check you write just vanishes. But a mortgage payment, well, that's building your future. It feels so simple, so intuitive.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That simple statement, it's a trap. And believing it has literally cost people fortunes. The truth is, for a lot of people, in a lot of situations, buying a house is actually the faster way to throw money away. And I'm going to show you exactly why.
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we first have to dismantle these huge psychological hurdles, these three great housing lies that are just baked into our culture. Let's knock them down one by one.
So, first up, this whole idea that rent is a waste. You know, the financial expert Ramit Sethi has this brilliant way of looking at it. Think about it. When you pay for a great meal at a restaurant, do you walk out saying you threw money away? No way. You paid for value, the food, the service, the experience. Rent is exactly the same. You're paying for a roof, for someone else to fix the toilet, and for the incredible freedom to just up and move. That's not waste. That's a fair exchange.
All right, myth number 2. Oh, you're just paying your landlord's mortgage. This assumes your landlord is living in some magical world where they just get to name their price. The reality is they can only charge what the local market will actually support. Yeah, sometimes they make a profit. And sometimes, after property taxes, a few months of vacancy, and a brand new water heater, they lose money.
And now for the big one, the myth about building equity. We're told a mortgage builds your wealth from day one. But look at this number. With a standard 30-year mortgage, it takes, get this, a staggering 21 years before more of your monthly payment is going to your principal, your actual equity, than to the bank in interest. For over 2 decades, you are mostly just making the bank rich.
So if just comparing a rent check to a mortgage payment is the wrong way to look at it, what's the right way? Well, let's bring in a super powerful framework that gives us a true apples-to-apples comparison. It's kind of the secret the pros use, and it's called the 5% rule. The whole key, the most important idea here, is to compare the unrecoverable costs of each option. So, what's that? It's just the money you pay for housing that you are never, ever getting back. For a renter, that's super easy. It's your rent. But for a homeowner, it's a lot more complicated.
So this expert, Ben Felix, he breaks down a homeowner's unrecoverable costs into 3 parts. First, property taxes. That's roughly 1% of the home's value. Every single year, gone. Second, maintenance. You know, leaky roofs, broken furnaces. That's another 1%, gone. And third, here's the one almost everyone misses, the cost of capital. Figure about 3%. That's the mortgage interest you pay, plus the money you could have earned if your down payment was invested in, say, the stock market instead of sitting in your house.
And here's where it all just clicks together. You add those costs up, 1% plus 1% plus 3%, and you get 5%. So on a $500,000 home, your annual unrecoverable cost is $25,000. Break that down, and you're at $2,083 a month. That is your magic number. If you can rent a similar place for less than that, renting is, financially, the smarter move. Period.
But wait, the math doesn't even stop there. The 5% rule covers the cost you have year to year. But there are these other hidden dangers just lurking in homeownership that can completely blow up your finances.
This quote right here, honestly, it is one of the most important things to remember in this whole debate. Your rent check is the absolute ceiling. That's the most you'll pay for housing that month. A mortgage payment? Oh, that's just the starting line. It's the bare minimum before all the other fun surprise costs start piling on.
And you know where some of the biggest costs pop up? The second you try to sell. These are what we call phantom costs. Agent commissions can be a huge slice of that pie, often 5%. Then you start adding in transfer taxes, staging costs, last-minute repairs. Before you know it, you can easily be looking at 10% of your home's entire value just vanishing into fees and costs.
And then there's what we'll call the leverage bomb. We're taught a mortgage is good debt, but what it really is a massive leveraged bet on one single thing, your house in one specific neighborhood. Now look, when prices are rocketing up, that leverage makes you feel like an absolute genius. But leverage doesn't care about you. It amplifies losses just as powerfully as it amplifies gains, and it can totally wipe you out.
So if the math often points towards renting,
Does that mean nobody should ever buy a house? Of course not. Not at all. It just means we need to completely shift our thinking. This isn't just about a spreadsheet. It's a life decision. It's about understanding what you're really buying. Choosing to rent or buy? Look, it isn't about right versus wrong. It's a bet. It's a bet on your future self. When you rent, you're betting on flexibility, on simplicity, and on the ability to potentially get higher returns by investing your money somewhere else. When you buy, you're betting on stability, on putting down roots in a community, and yeah, on the hope that your specific property goes up in value. The real question is, which bet makes more sense for the life you want to live right now?
You know, there's a much smarter, lower risk way to go about this. It's the rent before you buy strategy. I mean, even former President Obama did this. He rented a house in a neighborhood for months before he actually bought it. This lets you test drive everything, the commute, the local grocery store, the noisy neighbors, before you make a massive and often irreversible financial commitment.
So after all that, let's say you've run the numbers with a 5% rule, you've thought about the lifestyle bet, and you've decided buying is what you want. There is still one final critical question you have to ask yourself.
This right here, this is the final readiness check. It's the 28-36 rule. First, your total housing costs, that's mortgage, taxes, insurance, all of it should be less than 28% of your gross monthly income. Second, your total debt, so housing plus car payments, student loans, everything, shouldn't be more than 36%. And finally, have you saved a 20% down payment? That's not just to avoid extra fees, it's proof that you have the financial discipline that homeownership demands. And that really brings us to the ultimate truth of this whole thing. Renting isn't throwing money away, it's buying flexibility. Owning isn't a guaranteed path to riches, it's a huge commitment to a specific lifestyle, one with high costs and high risks. A spreadsheet can tell you the price of each option, but only you can determine the value for the life you actually want to live. So, what are you truly optimizing for?